At one point, Dennis Hopper is jumping up and down and screaming at Francis because he's making him do some retakes and stuff. And they had a pot. They had come from Thailand and had pot in their lining of their suitcase, which they were taking back to Australia or something. The guy said that they'd go to makeup. So this guy had been disemboweled, and he was one of the guys who was laying in a picture with his stomach and his guts hanging out. And what it was like a 16s. You had to have the right kind of machine guns. We had to have the helicopters. A whole shitload of beer. And drink, I don't know, cases of beer on the thing, and just stand up and piss out the back door of the bus as it was driving along. And Fishburne was kind of lippy.
Like, I know this one dude who came back, and he's nothing but a dope smoker, and all he does is smoke dope. He said Vietnam was the best thing they could have done for my ass. He was incredibly weird. He was Marlon Brando, and then they would say lights, camera, action, and he would become Colonel Kurtz.
Okay. Hang on, wait a minute. Just repeat that. You were what? You were
Brando's body double.
Russell's been here so long that when he first went to St. Labori, there was no lake there. There was no bridge there. It was a town in the valley. That's how long he's been. He's been here since before aircon in taxis. Good morning, this is Bangkok. It's early morning on a Saturday and I'm on my way to see a very good old friend of mine called Russell, aka the Rascal. Russell is an American dude. He's been living here for about 40 years, perhaps a little bit more. And today we're going to have a good chat with him. We're going to talk about a few things, and hopefully we're going to talk about the time or the reason why he first came to Asia, and that was to shoot or to take part in the filming of Apocalypse Now. Let's go and chat to Russell.
I'd like to say I'm older than I look, but I look pretty old. I'm from San Francisco, California. I'm 72 years old. I've lived in Thailand for 40-something years. I got here via the Philippines. I was in the movie Apocalypse Now in 1976. And then I came here in 1977, and then I met my wife, and then we lived in America for a little while, and then we decided that living in Thailand was much nicer, so we moved back. And
okay,
that's how I got here.
Perfect. So let's go back then, if you don't mind, mate. Let's go back to 1976. You were involved in the filming of Apocalypse Now. First of all, if you could just tell me how that came about. I believe you might have had a contact there somewhere through Francis Ford Coppola, yeah. How did that happen?
My sister's best friend in school became the nanny for Coppola before he was famous, before he was really famous. And he had a toothache, and the nanny sent him to my father, the dentist, and my father became Coppola's dentist. Then a couple of years later, he got more richer and more famous, and he wanted to do Apocalypse Now. It was very controversial in its day because the Vietnam War had just ended in 1975.
Right.
We had pulled out our troops, so it was still a painful memory. And he hadn't been there, and he didn't know how many Americans were there, so he had a party, a going away party, and at the party he said, and if you want to come be in my war, nobody will get hurt, buy your own ticket. So the tickets were $1,500 round trip, and he promised 25 days work at $25 a day. Me and 2 other guys from that party arrived, and 3 other guys had arrived, and there's a total of 6 of us.
Okay.
And when we got there, he didn't know what to do with us, so he made us group leaders, like a platoon leader.
Okay.
So we were all extras, and you know, we did army stuff and like that. And 3 of the guys wanted to be actors, so they got their picture taken in the movie in the early stages of the movie. And then when the movie shut down that part of the production, they didn't get rehired because we didn't need them anymore. But me and the other 2 guys stayed. because we weren't in the picture. So one of the guys became an assistant editor, and the other guy became a cameraman for the second unit. And I became a production assistant.
Okay.
And at the end of the movie, I get credit as a production assistant.
I believe you may have had a second role in that movie as well.
Yes, I did. That was at the end.
Right.
So at the very beginning, I was an extra, just a soldier boy.
Okay.
And the first time we filmed, I didn't shave that day, and we were supposed to be a headquarters company, and so they picked all of us because we needed the 25 days work. We had to get our 25 days in quickly. So they put me somewhere, and then somebody said, well, you know, if he was in headquarters, he would have had to shave every day. Send him out to makeup to shave him or something. So by the time I got back in, they had already done something and replaced me with somebody. And that was when I realized that I didn't want to be in front of the camera, because once they take your picture, they don't need you anymore. So if you're an extra and you run across the screen, that's it. You're done.
Right. Okay.
So the three guys who wanted to be actors, they all got a stand next to somebody or a speaking line, yes sir, something like that. And then their 25 days of work were up, and they were done. They were home. So we filmed some stuff, and then we went to the beach where they filmed the napalm bombing, the helicopter attack, the surfing, the attack on the village, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And that took a long time. We were there a couple of months. And before we went there, after we had filmed the stuff that was near Manila, and I realized that I didn't want to take my picture, I got to be like a messenger. And Coppola had other movies he was working on at the same time. He had other business things going on. He had a lot of shit. And he had these packets of written documents that came and went from the set. And so the office in Los Angeles would send the documents to Manila. Manila would send the documents to the set. Somewhere at the set, they'd give them to me, and I'd find him and bring him to his assistant, who would give him the papers. Then later on, they gave me a radio because they were farther away, and I got to listen to the radio and change the channel and tell other people what to do.
Yep.
So by the time they did the big napalm thing, there was a giant storm, and that set was wiped out, and they couldn't do anything else with it, so they decided to go to the Brando stuff because he was scheduled in. So they closed up production after Robert Duvall and the Beach, and then a month or so later they came back and started again at a different set, a different place. And that was when I got to be the real assistant and didn't do anything else, just coordinated with the office and coordinated like that, and did some good work. That's where in the office they had the triplets, Luli, Lulu, and Lula.
Okay.
Which we met one time in a row. So Luli was the girl at the office.
Right.
And one day at the set, I said, "Oh, Luli," and she says, "Oh no, I'm Luli's sister. I'm Lula." And then about a month later, I'm shopping in a mall, and I see her, and I say, "Oh, Luli," and she says, "No," and I said, "Lula," and she said, "No, I'm Lulu. We're triplets."
So tell me just in general a little bit about what was it like, living conditions? I mean, what were your digs like? What was day to day like back in '76 in the Philippines, mate?
It was pretty.
You can be as honest as you want as well.
In Manila,
yeah,
I stayed at a really cool place, a pension. The woman was Russian, with one eye.
Okay.
And her husband was the Filipino guy, and they ran this pension, little fucking rooms, and then we went to the office every day and got a little bus to work. But after, when they moved down to the provinces, when they did the big one with the napalm and stuff, that was in a place called Bel Air, and it was out nowhere. and it was like an 8-hour bus ride over the mountains. It was like going to Phuket, like that big long mountain trip. But the road was dirt, it was all dusty, and the company hired 4 buses for all the extras, and they were just regular old like school buses. No air, the doors were open, and we had a whole shitload of beer. And we drank, I don't know, cases of beer on the thing, and just stand up and piss out the back door of the bus as it was driving along.
What else was involved? Because I've read loads of stories that there were loads of drugs on set and loads of people became addicts, this, that and the other. Now, what else was there? Was there weed? So,
Philippines is famous for rum. And all the soldiers have a canteen, and so the routine was you buy a bottle of rum, you fill up the canteen with rum, and on the movie set, because everybody was hot and it was loaded with Americans and the Italians and all these other foreigners, they had these big wash tubs full of ice water with water, orange juice, fruit juice, Coca-Cola, all like that. So you'd fill your canteen with rum, and then you'd stop and you get a Coca-Cola and you'd pour some out and pour some rum in it and drink Coca-Cola and rum all day. They because it was Hollywood, there was some people who delivered drugs to some people.
See, why didn't you say that to him in the scene?
Who?
Something clever like that. When he says, "Who are you?" Why didn't you say, "Who are you?"
Because I haven't learned my lines yet.
I know, you've had him for 5 days.
I met some travelers who had come who wanted to get extra work in the movies as they were traveling around.
Right, okay.
And they had a pot. They had come from Thailand and had pot in their lining of their suitcase, which they were taking back to Australia or something. But when they got to the movie set, they opened it up and sold it all to the Americans.
And did you do what sort of first of all, for those of us that don't know, what sort of famous actors were involved in this, and who did you meet?
I met them all because I was there from before they started until after it ended.
Which was how long?
A year and a half, about.
Okay.
So originally it was going to be Harvey Keitel, and he came. But after a couple of days of filming, they didn't think he looked right.
He was in Brando's role, right?
No, he was in Martin Sheen's role.
Of course.
Right, he was in Martin Sheen's role. And so they filmed a little bit with him, and then they decided they didn't like it, and they stopped. And then they brought in Martin Sheen, and they started over differently, but just, like that. And then we had Robert Duvall and Dennis Hopper and a couple of other actors, a guy named Glenn who went on. We had the guy who became the most famous of all was, of course,
Marlon.
No.
Brando.
The black kid.
Oh.
Boys in the Hood.
Yeah.
Lawrence Fishburne.
Larry
So
Fishburne,
when I have pictures of me with Larry Fishburne, he's 14 years old.
Wow.
He was a method actor from New York that Francis met, and they hired him because they wanted to prove the young kid like that.
Yeah.
So we hung out with Larry all the time.
Right, what have you just found, mate?
A picture of me and Sam Bottoms and a picture of me and Lawrence Fishburne and family friend Susan Shosha.
Wow.
Yeah, he was 14.
And
this is Sam Bottoms, the surfer.
so you were telling me, just quickly, mate, if you don't mind, you were telling me why they recruited someone of that age.
Because they wanted the realism of the Vietnam War, that everybody was young.
Auditioning here in New York, 14. Francis Coppola, the director, Fred Roos, the producer. Fred is doing all the talking. Francis is not saying anything.
And you're 14
I'm
years old.
14 years old. How old are you? 16. Oh, okay. What grade are you in? Oh, I'm a sophomore in high school. And then this young woman comes in, receptionist, puts something on the desk, and as she's leaving, Francis finally speaks up and goes, hey, you think this kid could be 18? And whoever this young woman, God bless her, whoever she is and wherever she is, she said, oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, Fishburne was a gas. He was a young kid. It was his first big movie. It was a lot of fun. He was really enthusiastic. We had Sam Bottoms. Sam Bottoms was famous for a couple of movies before that. And his brothers came to visit. He had a brother Tim and a brother Joe. And Sam had just come from a Clint Eastwood one where he was a cowboy. And when Brando showed up on the set, he had just done a cowboy movie, and he had like a page boy haircut, long hair to his collar,
really?
and
Okay.
bags. He was a cowboy. So originally his role was he was in a starched uniform. He had a military haircut. And he was full colonel and strict military. He had in the script he hadn't gone native. So he and Francis had a big drink-up party or whatever, and he got real drunk and was hanging out with the Vietnamese, and we had Vietnamese pajamas for the Viet Cong. And he shaved his head and put on his Viet Cong pajamas, and that's when he and Francis decided that would be the Kurt's character.
Right.
At the same time, when he arrived, we were all told, okay, no work for any extras for 6 weeks, already da-da-da-da-da. So we all got real drunk and went into the makeup tent. Now, I wanted a mohawk haircut like that, because in those days that would have been real wild. And my friends were all fucking around with me, and so the first guy took the shave, went from ear to ear, over the top, the middle, ruined the thing. So I had a shaved head. So the next morning we all showed up. The headquarters was in a hotel lobby, and it was sort of open air and had a bunch of tables and a coffee shop and shit, and everybody would meet there and go on. So I staggered into the hotel with massive hangover and a shaved head, and Brando had put on his Viet Cong pajamas and shaved his head, and everybody laughed. So the first day they had him on the set, in the old style. So what Francis did, which was revolutionary, was he filmed in video at the same time that he filmed in film. And then he did his rough editing in video and sent the film to Italy, where they developed it, and then it was sent back and it was edited. I think some of it was edited on site and some of it was edited in LA. But there was a big thing, and doing it on video was remarkable in his day. And he had bought his own camera, and the camera was $250,000. And that didn't count the lenses, the track, the dollies, any of that stuff. It was a massive investment, because he didn't want to be under the thumb of the studio who owned the equipment.
What was he filming in? 35mm? 70?
Yeah, 35. That's Cinerama. Not Cinerama, but big film.
Okay.
And it was a gas, because the short ends of the film were given to the official photographer, and in the dark he was rolling the film into his camera, and the pictures came out super killer because the film was so high quality. But Francis owned the camera and the container full of bits that went with it, and the camera worked with two guys. One guy looked through the lens in the back and pulled the trigger and took the pictures, and the other guy stood in the front with a little handle, and he adjusted the focus, and he was the focus puller.
Right.
And they were Italians, because Francis had got Vittorio Storaro from Last Tango in Paris with Marlon Brando, and that was such an artsy-fartsy movie. So he brought in the Italians. So on the first day of filming, Brando is sitting at a table like this, and the guy pulling the camera says, "Hey, Bacigalupi, take the lens cover off of the camera. Everything is a black." And the Bacigalupi says, "I took the lens cover off, you fool, can't you see?" And the guy says, "It's all black. No, wait, I see a button." And what it was Brando was so big and so fat that what they had framed in for was just his chest. Right. Because I had a shaved head, and because I was one of the chosen six, I got to be his double.
Hang on, wait a minute. Just repeat that. You were what? You were
Brando's body double.
You were Marlon Brando's body double.
He had a stunt double, and he had the body double. And the stunt double was this really huge, big guy, ex-Marine or Navy guy, and he was the guy who stood in the doorway and filled it up. And he did some stuff like this. Brando's not really that big, and so they don't waste his time. They use somebody else. So they say, okay, in this scene, Brando is going to be sitting at his table reading. Here, Russell, sit at the table. Okay, lights, put him over here. No, we don't like it. Make it a little yellow. They get it all adjusted. Then they say, Russell, he's going to get up and go over to the door. Get up and go over to the door. And then they say, okay, so wait, get the camera, wait. And the focus puller is measuring. There's a tape measure under the lens. Yeah. And he pulls it out. It's just 37 feet or 12 inches or whatever. And then he sets a setting on the lens, and then pulls slowly as you walk, just to keep it focused. I don't understand how it works, how one guy can focus and the other guy can look through.
Let me ask you this though, just back to Brando a minute. How was he as like a general character. How was he? Did he speak to you? Did he ignore you?
He ignored most people.
Right.
He had this contract that gave him his own makeup man, his own diction coach, which was a husband and wife team that he had worked with since he'd done a movie when he was a young guy, and he really liked them, and he kept them employed basically because they got big money to be his own makeup man, and the wife was his coach. And then he had his secretary, who was a woman from his office, and she followed him around with a fucking clipboard, and she timed him. And his contract said he works this amount of time, then he gets that much time off, he gets this time off for lunch, he does this, he does that. He gets a boat, he gets to be helicoptered back and forth from the set. They had a huge list of stuff. And he had Filipino assistant, a little girl who stood around with a box of Kleenex to wipe his sweat off his forehead. And it was just nuts.
I was going to say, I heard he made about $2 million for a month's work, filming for 4 hours a day, but then they said he probably made 9 million or 10 million, what with the rights and everything.
My understanding was he got $50,000 a day for the first month, and then $67,500 for any other day after the first month, and he was there for an additional 2 weeks.
Okay.
So that in theory, I believe he's paid $1.5 million for his.
So he only filmed for 6 weeks?
Yeah, he was only there for 6 weeks.
Because I believe it was scheduled for 6 weeks filming, but it took, what, about 18 months, 16 months, something like that?
Yeah, the whole movie took 1.5 years. They stopped and started. And at one point, Dennis Hopper is jumping up and down and screaming at Francis because he's making him do some retakes and stuff. And Hopper says, I have 47 retakes and you do it once. He says, I do it once and I film it and we edit it and it's out in a week. I finish my movie in a month because he was talking about Easy Rider, right? And Easy Rider was I
remember Easy Rider.
A real cult movie that he and the other guy.
Yeah, I know Dennis Hopper and not Steve McQueen.
No.
Easy Rider, Jack Nicholson.
No, the blonde guy. Peter Fonda. My favorite story about him is, so Robert Duvall and Dennis Hopper were regular fucking people. They hung out with the regular people in the lobby. They ate and drank regular food. They drank. Duvall's an ex-sailor. He had sailor ditties. He told jokes. He was great fun. Dennis Hopper was also a wild man in real life. He'd drink and had a good time with everybody.
I heard that.
Okay,
yeah.
But Brando disappeared from set, hung out in his own place with his own people. Martin Sheen had his wife and his family. He disappeared. The guy with the boat had his wife and his family, and he was... I don't remember if he was vegan or just... Anyhow, he wanted special food, so he would leave the set, the driver of the boat. He was an actor. And so the only people who were really down to earth was Duvall and... and Fred Forrest. Fred Forrest was good fun. He hung out a lot. He was good fun. And Sam Bottoms. He hung out with us. They were all...
Is there any kind of interaction that you remember with Brando that might be, for example, when you were sort of acting as a body double, anything he said, or was
once he almost stepped on me.
Oh, right, okay.
Okay, so at one point, so they filmed that big fight scene where they're hacking at where Martin Sheen's hacking at him with the big knife, and he's got these boards under his clothes, so that Martin Sheen's really hitting him with this knifey thing, and then he falls down dead. So then the next day I come in and I'm laying on the floor and he walks in, but in order to look taller he had put lifts, and I think he had like 2-inch soles on his, like what were those shoes that we used to wear with the high platforms? He had like
Cuban heels and platforms.
Right. He had tried a pair of platform boots and he was kind of wobbling around. I was laying on the floor where he was supposed to be dead, and he like almost stepped on me or tripped over me. He said hello a few times. I got to tell, I walk over here, I look over there like that. He was incredibly weird. He was Marlon Brando, and then they would say lights, camera, action, and he would become Colonel Kurtz.
Okay.
And he would talk different, look different, act different, be different, and as soon as they said stop, action, cut, whatever they say at the end, he would go back to being Marlon Brando. turn it on and off with a switch.
Okay.
But Dennis Hopper couldn't. He had to live the role. He never changed. He wore his costume after movie hours on the set. Everybody else changed clothes. Right. Go home, take a shower, change your clothes. Dennis Hopper never did. He had all those necklaces with the teeth and all kind of weird gooly mooly stuff. And he was a nutcase. He was a real party guy.
Great to even put Dennis Hopper and Marlon together, because tries to have me figured out what Marty's going to do with Marlon. What happens if I got crazy Dennis Hopper in there?
I know nothing.
I'll tell you. But you don't let me tell you.
Time for a quick commercial break. Go make yourself a nice drink, for today's video is brought to you by Heart of Darkness Coffee. Keeps you going until the next take.
I'll tell you who else we met.
Go
on. Kurt Russell.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Kurt Russell, the Disney actor. So Kurt Russell's sister was, I think she was the girlfriend of the assistant director or something, and he had just come from Australia where he had filmed, I think it was called The Strongest Man in the World, or The Little Strongest, some movie like that where he was like that. So the story is he was a Mickey Mouse Club.
Right,
He was in the Mickey Mouse Club, and they had all these adventures. So the girls had adventure, the boys had adventure, and the regular adventure was Spin and Marty. And Spin and Marty every week got their little thing, and he was either Spin or Marty. He was a Disney kid along with all those other Mouseketeers. He was good fun too. He hung out for about a week. And again, hang out in the lobby, eat food, drink beers with everybody else. You know, none of this were fancy, because there was a Hollywood elite group that were on the production side that didn't mingle with the workers, the producers.
Right, okay.
Like that, right? They stayed away from the crowd like that.
It's quite windy, but let's see how we go, and we can hear the mosque in the background. Look, that's good. I've read quite a lot about Apocalypse Now, and it's been said that the production of it, I mean, it took so long for a number of reasons, but they said it was plagued by natural disasters, which you've mentioned a little bit, drug use, alcoholism, suicidal breakdowns, fatal conditions for Filipino construction workers, animal rights violations, heart attacks, movie star egos, and investigations into human corpses on set. Can you tell us about any of that, mate?
There was no human corpses on set.
That didn't happen, did it?
Only, my understanding is, when they were building the set, one guy was killed when a tree fell on him. But no, nobody was injured. There were never any medical emergencies. Everything was really safe. It was quite okay. There was some drunken binges. There was some, like that, but nothing crazy. The real reason was Francis was spending a lot of money and making a lot of shooting and going overtime, and they went broke. And they stopped, and then he found more money. And then they went broke again, and they stopped, and then he found more money.
How much do you reckon he put in of his own money then?
A lot of money. I know he
I read it was over 5.
Oh yeah, no. He mortgaged a building that he owned in San Francisco that had his movie studios in it. He mortgaged his house, a bunch of shit like that. No, he put up a bunch of dough. Wow. I remember that we had a party on the movie set when he had spent more money than Cleopatra. he had a big party. I've made the most expensive movie in the world to date. Cleopatra cost $40 million. I've spent 42, and we're not done yet. It was something like that.
And is it true that he couldn't actually watch back what he'd filmed until he got back to the States?
No.
Is that not true?
No, they watched it every day. Every day they had rushes, and they looked at it on video, and then they would pick stuff out and decide what to do or redo or what to add and re-add. They did a lot of script modification as they went along.
Did you get to see some of the outdoor sets as well?
Oh yeah, all of them.
All of them, yeah.
So there was a bit where we were doing something, and it was still early in the movie, but it was supposed to be later on in the movie, and Martin Sheen did something with his M16. I think he jumped into a trench, but anyhow he got a cut on his cheek, and then they put a bandage on it, and then they had to go back in the movie in the past and put a bandage on his cheek, which was supposed to be later in the movie, which was filmed earlier as they mixed all of this stuff like that. The other thing that happened was we did a big headquarters scene, the bit with Harrison Ford. as the CIA guy
Oh,
in
right,
the trailer.
yeah,
So that
yeah,
was a
yeah.
different movie set. And that movie set was like an army base. And after Francis left it, the Philippine company that was his co-producer rented it out to a movie called The Boys in Company C.
Ah, okay.
The movie The Boys in Company C was filmed, edited, and released while Francis was still filming his Vietnam War movie in the Philippines. They whacked it out in 6 weeks and got it out the theaters in the summertime. It was pretty funny. He took a really, really, really long time shooting it, and he kept getting it bigger and grandioser, and just more of everything.
I mean, just in case my viewers don't know, we're talking about a guy that filmed or made also Godfather 1 and 2 among many other fantastic movies, but I would suggest this was probably his masterpiece. No,
I agree. The Godfather was pretty impressive. Godfather 2, and so he had the same team. So his special effects team, they had done Godfather and Godfather 2, and Fishburne was kind of lippy, and everybody used to joke around a lot, and they would say, "Better be nice to me, because when we're going to kill you, we can make it hurt."
yeah, right. Okay.
Right? When we're going to kill you, we can make it hurt. And he kept saying, "Oh yeah, you want to die like Sonny did in the Toll Plaza?" You remember that, right? There was a million bullet holes in that one.
Yeah. I'll ask you about my favourite scene in a minute. What's your favourite scene in the movie, and did you witness any of the filming of it? What's your favourite scene, do you think?
With me in it or with me out not in it?
Both.
Okay, so my famous scene when I'm in it is I throw the yellow smoke grenade when the helicopter lands in the village and gets bombed.
Okay.
So in the middle of the beach attack where they're surfing, there's a scene where it's a courtyard, and there's a woman and some stuff, and a guy runs out and throws a yellow smoke grenade and then waves his arm, and the helicopter lands, and then the people get on, and then somebody rushes out, and as the helicopter's taking off, they throw a hand grenade in, and when the helicopter is 8 or 10 feet off the ground, it explodes, boom, and they have this big crash.
Yeah.
So I'm the guy who throws the yellow smoke grenade
Nice.
and waves his arms,
Okay.
because you couldn't see me, couldn't identify me. I was just another body.
I'll have to watch
and
that,
then in the napalm scene, I'm in the front of the foremost column of people. There's all these people that look like prisoners. They got their eyes tied and their hands tied, and there's
Yep.
people poking with rifles and pushing them along. And I'm the leader of the closest prisoner train group in the napalm thing. And I was pretty far away, but we still felt the whoosh and the
Okay.
heat and the boof. That was a
Okay.
fucking hell of an explosion he put on. So what they did to stimulate the napalm run was they had all these big PVC pipes, 4-inch PVC pipe, and they filled it up with gasoline
Right.
and with diesel and with propane gas.
Wow.
And then they wrapped it with explosive, and kaboom, set it off. And it was really hot for an instant, and I could feel a puff of air. Pretty entertaining. I mean, I never.
Yeah. A couple of questions then about my favourite scene, which has got to be the Ride of the Valkyries music and the helicopters, right? Now, two questions about that. One, where did they get all the helicopters from? And number two, I read that was filmed pretty much live, in the he didn't have enough money to do 2 or 3 takes, and a lot of it was shot in one go, where all the helicopters come flying across and bosh.
Yes.
Explosions.
Okay, so the reason the movie was filmed in the Philippines was because he needed to get his hands on current Vietnam era hardware. He needed the right kind of helicopters and the right kind of airplanes and the right kind of rifles, and because he couldn't bring his own rifles. They could bring a few, but so he had a deal with Marcos because it was under martial law. So there was a business deal with the movie studios that Marcos, and there was a military unit that was in charge of the dynamite, the explosives, and the blanks and the guns. And every day you had to check in and check out your rifle with the Filipino military guys.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, that was the guy that I arm wrestled. I wrist wrestled.
Did you win?
No. So his name was Felix, and he had been, after I found out. So we're all we drink and have a good time. So he needed those boats, the PBR boat, and he got one from the Philippines that really worked. He had a fiberglass knockoff model that they used, and he had one from Thailand that they rented, and it had a Thai Navy crew. And the Thai Navy crew hung out with the Filipino Army guys, military to military. So anyhow, we're all sitting around drinking beer, and everybody's fucking around, and the Filipinos, guys from the mountains, thumb wrestle. And so we're Americans, so we're wrist wrestling. And I, young and think I'm strong or whatever, and I'm wrist wrestling with Felix, and he goes, and I'm holding it, and bang, and my shoulder's fucked up to this day, because it turns out that he was an Olympic gymnast athlete on the Filipino national team, and represented the Philippines in the Olympics like 8 years before I arm wrestled him, when he was really young and strong. There's a scene with a tank, with a flamethrower. There was a couple armored personnel carriers. We all had to have M16s. You had to have the right kind of machine guns. We had to have the helicopters. The helicopters were the big part, the Hueys. So the Filipino Army supplied the helicopters. Every day in the morning, they would leave the base near the Manila side, fly over to the other side of the island. They would repaint them, put an American flag on the tail, and give the names and stuff. They'd fly them around for the day, and then they'd paint them back Filipino colors and fly them back to their base at night.
So they actually employed artists to do what I believe is called nose art on the front of, remember when we went to the place and we saw all the Hueys?
Yeah.
So they had someone come in and paint all that over, and
he had the most incredible art department known to man. The Filipino artists were great.
Right.
That big temple that Kurtz is in with the woman's head on the top, the four-sided face, her name was Gigi Duenas. She was the most gorgeous girl. She worked for the film company Nepomukino, and they modeled her face for the heads on the Khmer style temples and stuff. My friend's name was Ishko. He was an artist. He made a board game. So the art director was a guy named Doug from America, and the props man was a guy named Doug from America. His business was props, movie props. So he bought some water buffalo to take back to put in movies. And he said, boy, I hope Francis does a cowboy movie someday, because I have all these old cowboy stuff from, I'll think of the guy's name. He was a famous TV cowboy in American TV. So he had the art department make a board game of Apocalypse Now. And my friend Ishko did it. So they got 2 pieces of wood, and they took scenes from the movie and went around and made stops. They got dice. They had like a helicopter, an airplane. Had little toys, and the inside looked like a jungle. And they had a Monopoly game for Francis of Apocalypse Now. The art department made it. They were great. They painted shadows on the ground. Anybody who took a photograph, the photographs were all perfect, because everything was a movie set, right? So things were different colors on different sides to give it the right effect. Bricks all had lines to make them very specific. So the landscape guy, I forget, set directors, he had these boys who had those bug sprayers on their back with the handle, and you have like 5 gallons of liquid in the back and a spray wand, and he had them with like red and black and gray water paint, and they would walk along and he would paint stuff. He would say, spray a little gray over here, and they would spray the shadows or the highlights or like that. Pretty incredible. Paint the grass green, basically. They were really good. The artists were really good.
What about like? Did you get any? Not necessarily you yourself, but did they give out anyone like momentums or souvenirs or anything to mark your time on set?
No, but they had all of these little things that you could buy. The Filipinos were very much into like the ties. Find something to sell. So I have a belt buckle.
Right.
I have a bunch of T-shirts, different art department, stunts department.
You've got original Apocalypse Now T-shirts.
Yeah, 2 or 3 of them left.
We'll go back to yours and film them in a minute.
Yeah. And I found the belt buckle, but I don't remember where it was.
Oh, there we go. Original T-shirts from
schmutzy.
Apocalypse Now. They've seen better days, but
They certainly have. I mean, after all, they're 40, almost 50 years old.
look at that, man. All right, there's your name. Okay, let's see the other side.
And then what is Nippa Pacino Productions? What's
Hemisphere
it say?
Pictures, Apocalypse Now. Are they all the same?
No,
Oh, they're all different.
they're all different.
Wow. Okay, Apocalypse Now. Bangkocalypse Now.
Coppola Cinema 7.
Yes, but things may look a little better in the morning. Interesting. I wish these were bigger and Kilgore's Killers. That's the geezer who went surfing.
That's
isn't it?
that's the helicopter one.
Yeah.
This is from that thing.
Wow, that's Dealers in Death. Do you know what, mate? That T-shirt is very cool. Transportation Department, Apocalypse Now. Fantastic. Official
Balut
Balut Eater. Wow.
Those are those terrible eggs that the Filipinos eat.
Yeah, did you try one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I got the T-shirt.
What's
It was
the
pretty
last
terrible.
Okay, more of a bigger logo, but things may look better in the morning. Very cool.
The skulls were the coolest thing. They were styrofoam molded castings, right?
yeah.
And they had thousands
Right.
of them, and they stuck them on totem poles, and they laid them in piles, and they built them in everywhere you see all of the bones and all that stuff is just styrofoam. They're not real. They're not real. And I took a picture once. We're all in the lunch line, and there's there was real Vietnamese, and then there were Filipino Vietnamese extras. They weren't Vietnamese, but they played Vietnamese, and they played the dead people and stuff. And this guy said that they'd go to makeup. So this guy had been disemboweled, and he was one of the guys who was laying in a picture with his stomach and his guts hanging out. And what it was like a big piece of rubber with fake entraily bits on
Wow.
it. And at lunchtime, he was standing in the lunch line with this tray, and he had his guts hanging out, and some blood dripping off of his body like that. And it was pretty funny. So there was 3 food lines.
Right.
There was food lines for the Filipinos,
Right.
food lines for the Vietnamese, and food lines for the Americans.
Different
Although
food?
they were Italians, different food.
So different food. So for example, did you ever? So what type of American food were you being given?
Well, it was Farang food, and it was mostly Italian because the camera crew was Italian.
Right,
And so
okay.
at one point or another, one day, everything is bad. Oh, the Italians aren't happy. Well, okay, so there was the key grip, the set guy. There was about 6 Italians, and they were like brother-in-laws and stuff. It was a
Yep.
tight little unit, and they always worked with the same camera guy. And the Italians, they're unhappy. Why? They have to pay taxes. What do you mean? Oh, their food. They're hungry. They can't eat because their food got stopped at customs. What do you mean? Oh, it seems like when they sent the film back and forth, they maybe put a little Italian food in that they didn't declare. You know, maybe some pasta or some salamis or something. Oh, well, don't worry, I'll pay it. What do you mean it's how much money? Like that? They've been smuggling it for how long? Like that. So he had a caterer from Hong Kong, and the guy did the American foreigners lunches, and they had, it was regular like a buffet, and the Filipinos got Filipino food and the Vietnamese people got Vietnamese food, or what it was. So what I didn't realize at the time was the Vietnamese people that they hired, the real Vietnamese people, were the boat people. They were the refugees who had fled Vietnam. They were the losers in the war. And when they got to the Philippines, they were in a refugee camp, and then Francis hired them through the government and paid the government money, and they got money, and they got to be out of the refugee camp and on the movie set.
Can I just say that you could argue they were winners in the war in the fact that they got to go and live their lives in America.
Well, they
so
got out.
There's a couple of ways of looking at it, right?
Yeah, they were lucky and got out. Yeah. But we hired them to play the Viet Cong.
Okay.
So instead of being the Vietnamese civilians that they were, they had to put on the conical hats and wear the black pajamas and throw hand grenades and like that. It was pretty funny. So in the helicopter scene, I run out and throw the smoke grenade and wave my hands, and the helicopter comes down, and my girlfriend at the time plays the school teacher, and she throws the hand grenade in the helicopter, and it was this incredible stunt. So they fly the helicopter in and out and take a bunch of pictures, people climbing in, people climbing out, it taking off and throwing the hand grenade in, and then they had a fiberglass mock-up that they set up on a collapsing stage about 10 or 12 feet in the air, and it had a little rocket thing that spun the propeller, and they set this thing up on the stage, spun the propeller, and then set off an explosion in it and collapsed the stage underneath, and the thing fell to the ground and broke apart in flames. And it, by the way they cut it, it looked like the real helicopter crashed and burned, but it didn't. Also, they did a scene where they picked up the boat and moved it out of the ocean into a river or something like that. Right. It was the same thing. It couldn't possibly pick up that boat with that kind of helicopter, so it was a hollow fiberglass shell.
Something's just popped in my head while I think about it. Now, for those people that know that the movie's based on the novel by Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness. Now, I would suggest that Marlon Brando must have read that to be able to depict that character in that way.
Oh,
right?
yeah, they all spent a lot of time.
Coppola as well,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
I'm sure they did.
You know, it's the same thing. They had to buy the rights to do it.
Yes.
They didn't just pick it. You know, this was a, you know.
I heard it was a because in terms of Heart of Darkness, I heard that many people had tried to make it before actually, and other people have been commissioned to make it, but they just couldn't.
Totally possible,
Couldn't
but
make it work.
he moved it to Vietnam from Africa,
indeed,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and he made it a war movie rather than a Lost in the Jungle. But you know,
would you war movie? Let me ask you this: in your opinion, would you say it's pro-war or anti-war?
Anti-war.
It is
very anti-war. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was really funny. So the prop master, he got some really cool French cars. We needed French cars because Vietnam had French cars. Right, so he got some old Renaults and a couple of Citroens, and he had one of those really cool Citroen.
But they broke down a lot.
I know, we only towed around. It was called the Traction Avant, the one that looks like a gangster car.
Yeah, okay.
The wire wheels and the long hood like that. Yeah. And it was a beauty. It was really classical. And Francis walks along and he's busy setting the scene and he's telling people to do this. And they fucking tip over the car, light a fire underneath it. And the prop guy comes around and says, I'm having a hard time telling the guy because I told him I only wanted to borrow his car for the day. Don't worry, we'll give you $50 and use your car. Whoops, we tipped it over and burned it.
I've got a couple of questions really, but more about geeking out about the movie really.
Okay.
I mean, tigers. Well, I mean, the tiger thing. Where did they get a tiger from a zoo or?
No, the tiger was an actor. The tiger was brought in from Hollywood. My understanding was the tiger was $15,000 a day, and he came with a handler, a guy and a woman. And that their business was animal trainers in Hollywood, and they had a whole bunch of other animals. And the tiger was there for a week or so. It had to have time to acclimatize, and it had to have food, and they gave it a goat in the movie.
Right.
And when Fred Forrest, so the tiger was just like a big cat. It was really cool. And so the stunt man is holding the goat. It's a dead goat. And he's holding it from the back. And you can't see him because the camera's focused on Fred Forrest. And the tiger swipes the fucking goat out of the thing with like that. And Fred said he flipped out. He never realized how powerful the animal was. Wow. You know, hey, you see tigers, they're cool. You take a picture, you get pet, da-da-da-da-da. And he says when this thing went after the food, and it's a 400-pound animal, I mean, he said it just whipped it, just whoosh. The stunt guy was pretty cool. Terry somebody. He raced not NASCAR. He raced Mustangs or something like
okay.
that, some manly kind of thing. So his story was he was some goof from Arizona, and he got hired to be a cowboy in a John Wayne movie, and then thought, oh, this is cool, I'll do this. So he became a stuntman, and he was a famous car crasher, and he did a whole bunch of other crazy movies with big stunts, and he had a big repertoire. So did the special effects guys. These were all bunch of credits to their
all
name.
these guys went on to make incredible movies, loads of different stuff, didn't they?
So anyhow, this guy, Terry the stuntman, at a different time, in a different place in the movie, we're staying in a hotel like these ones here in Thailand that are U-shaped 3-story hotels with a pool in the middle.
Yep.
Right? Typical all along
I know the
Peppery
ones,
Road.
yeah.
And everybody's lounging around the pool having fun. It's actually raining. It's a rainy day and there's no filming. And everybody's drinking by the pool, and he walks away, and the next thing they know, he's on the roof. He's on the roof, not on the balcony, he's on the roof of the building. And he kind of poses a little bit and does a swan dive into the pool. And everybody's flipping out. Oh my God, he's so drunk, whatever. But it was a stunt. They had measured it. They had prepared it. He knew what he was doing. It was not some drunk guy jumping off the building. It was, yeah, I've studied it, I've measured it, I'm going to land exactly there, I'm going to stand here, I'm going to spring X hard. The other thing they had was, they had this springboard, and it had a car air shock in it, and you buried it ground level, and then when the guys run on it, the guy had a trigger, and as you stepped on the thing, he triggered it, and it would flip up in the air, and these guys, so when the bomb goes off, right? The guy is running, the bomb goes off, and the body goes flying through the air. It's a stuntman who does one of those like gymnastic jumps, where they jump on the board and the spring, and they do a flip.
The table.
Okay, and like that. There was so much cool stuff.
Time for a quick commercial break. Go make yourself a nice drink, for today's video is brought to you by Heart of Darkness Coffee. Keeps you going until the next take.
I don't know if you know this or not. Who do you reckon came up with the surfing scene? I mean, whose inspiration is that, do you think? Do you think that's the director, or...?
That's a tough one.
Well,
I would bet it's Coppola in thinking what's the craziest thing that they would do. And I'm sure, you see, they had a lot of real Vietnam people stories.
Yeah.
And it started with a book called Dispatches by a guy named Michael Herr, H-E-R-R.
Yep.
And he was also a patient of my father's. And his book was, he was a reporter in Vietnam. And a lot of these stories that were incorporated in the movie came out of parts of his book that were told to him by people. And some of the things were told to Francis by real retired, mostly Navy veterans that live in the Philippines. There's hundreds of them that we had come through the movie all the time. Yeah, a lot of them had been, stories about I did this, or I saw that, or I did this, I wore that, or we did it like this.
So let me ask you this: you lived there for 18 months. Have you ever been back?
No.
You've never ever been back. How old are you now?
72.
Mate, you look pretty good for your age, mate. You know,
I don't feel so good.
Well, I don't know about that, mate.
I was 25.
You're pretty sprightly, mate. Well, let me leave you with this. You're going to probably put a funny face when I say this, but look, you could argue, I've read this, mate, this is not me, yeah. You could argue that the movie itself is saying that the Vietnam War was an acid trip, a bad hallucination. The soldiers encounter incidents that feel almost hallucinatory in their strangeness. Surfing, the tiger, the playmates, the last outpost, and finally Kurtz. Unfortunately, it's all real. What do you think about that, mate?
Real.
Yeah,
absolutely, very true.
Yeah.
Except it was over exaggerated, because everything Hollywood does is overly exaggerated.
Yeah.
But true, absolutely true.
So you
Playboy bunnies was a real thing.
Right. Okay.
Wonder Woman. Linda Carter.
Yes,
she
I
was.
remember her.
She was her. She was the lead dancer, and the Fillmore. What was his name? The impresario, Bill Graham.
Okay.
Bill Graham was there in the Playboy scene. He's the host, the introducer, and the band was. God damn it. They had a famous hit. We're saying, you're going to play their famous hit? And he says, no, they're going to play Susie Q, because that's the right time, the right era. No, they're not going to play their famous hit song.
Yeah.
You know, the Playmates, that was great fun. We're doing the scene, so supposedly, I want to say One of them is trying to get the girl to pay. He's got the Playboy fold out and he's trying to get her to pose in the helicopter. The other one is in a medical tent and he's trying to get her onto a gurney. And she looks out the window and she sees, is it Lawrence Fishburne?
Yep.
And I think he's got a toothbrush and toothpaste in his mouth and he looks in the window and she goes, "Ah, who are you?" And he says, "I'm next, baby." all kind of stuff like this got dropped from the movie. There was so much stuff that got dropped. There was a big, a whole giant thing called the French Plantation, where when they take the boat and they stop and they meet these French people on a plantation that have been there for 100 years, and all of that was
There
cut
is
out.
a director's cut that's really long.
Okay,
I
maybe
know that video used to be available like 7 hours long or
Nikki
something.
gave
silly.
me a video. I'll have to
Okay.
look at it, but
Okay.
it's CDs. I don't know how to look at them
okay.
anymore.
Oh, we'll find a way, mate. You can do it in your computer probably. Well,
I
mate.
don't have anyhow. But
So
yeah. So there was for that scene
Yeah.
he brought in Christian somebody, a famous French actor who was a buddy of Brando's. Brando decided to write in a scene for his friend,
Why
so
not?
they brought in some
Why
French
not?
people for a while and filmed something, and they built a whole big set, and that was cool because it was supposed to be like a roast beef dinner, and they kept bringing in food, they kept talking, and in that one. They wrote in a part for Francis's son, who stands there and recites a poem. The boy stood on the burning deck, his feet were full of fire, in French, and all that was good. But anyhow, so they did, I don't know, 6 or 8 takes, and in came the roast beef, and it got sliced, and then it went back out, and we ate it, and then they did it over again. In came the whole roast beef, and they sliced it with the wine or whatever. We all ate it.
See, that was 76, 77. When
Yeah.
did you arrive in Thailand first?
77.
77.
Okay, so I went to the Philippines in either the end of February or the very first week of March in 76. And the movie was over in about August. And I hung around for a couple of months with my friends, and we went to visit the headhunters, and we went to Zamboanga in the south, and it went around for a couple of months. And then I decided with my Peace Corps friends that we were going to go to Nepal. So in those days, the only way to get to Nepal was from Bangkok.
Right.
So they said we were on different days. They had left earlier, and they said meet me at the Peace Corps office. So I showed up. I came in, stayed nearby, went to the Peace Corps office, and there was a note in the window that said, "Russell, we've gone to Bob's guest house in Kathmandu, see you there," or something. And I met these guys with motorcycles in the parking lot. So I hung out with them, and that's how I ended up here.
So this sounds like, mate, I'm just going to join you around there just for a second. This sounds like the start of maybe the next video or the next chat that we have.
Sure.
In the I didn't do this in the intro, but I should say Russell's been here so long that when he first went to St. Labori, there was no lake there, there was no bridge there. It was a town in the valley. That's how long he's been. He's been here since before aircon in taxis. So I hope you've enjoyed this video today, and what we're going to do in the next video, we're going to go back to, we're going to start in the mid to late 70s here in Thailand, and Russell's going to tell us some very interesting stories, most of which I know and have heard, but some of which might be new. Thank you very much, Russell, indeed, for chatting with us today, and hope to see you soon, mate.
There you go.